Becky's Musical Podcast.
Resistance is useless!
In February of last year, I did an interview with guitarist Jason Falkner. While Jason may not be a household name to some people, the people who do know his music and who have followed his career are out of their minds for Jason Falkner. Jason is one of those guys whose music is so good, you'll wonder why this guy hasn't become the biggest rock star in the world, at least not yet. In other words, you're not going to find many people who are on the fence about the guy's greatness. You either love Jason Falkner or you just haven't heard him yet. Those are your only two options. And it's not just me saying this. Jason Falkner has spent a good deal of his career supporting guys you may have heard about, like Paul McCartney or Elton John or Glenn Campbell, Chris Cornell, or Beck, and many, many more. He was also a member of the band The Grays with John Bryan and the 3 O'Clock, and a one-time member of one of the most overlooked bands in history, one of my favorites, Jellyfish. But more importantly, it's Jason Falkner's solo work that really shows what the man is all about. Jason has released a handful of critically praised albums that are jammed with fantastic songs. Unfortunately, there have been a couple of his records that have been largely inaccessible here in the United States. Albums which have only been available in Japan. Albums that have sold at a premium because of their scarcity. One of those albums has just become available on streaming services titled All Quiet on the Noise Floor. And there's more of his back catalog on the way. And he's about to release his first solo record in more than a decade. So it is a real pleasure for me to welcome back Jason Falkner to Becky's Musical Podcast.
Yeah, how are you, man?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Woke up to a rainy day.
Well, you're talking to someone who's sitting in a 25-degree temperature room right now, so it's pretty damn
Oh my
cold.
God! Yeah, you guys get real weather.
Oh, yeah. and you guys get the fake stuff? I don't know. So.
It's a little too nice here usually, so we our brains are all scrambled. But the rain is rare, and it's been a crazy like heat wave this last week. It was like 80 degrees 2 days ago.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, so that's been nice.
You poor bastards having to put up with that. I feel horrible for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So the last time I interviewed you was back in February, and between you and me, it was actually only the second interview I had done for this podcast, and since then, and this is actually pretty cool. Since then, you are the second most downloaded episode of the podcast.
Oh, sweet.
But here's where it gets really interesting. The only other interview that I have more downloads with is with Andy Partridge.
Oh man,
and between
I'll take a second to Andy any day.
Absolutely, and the one who is right after you is Chris Franz from the Talking Heads. So your fan base is actually a whole lot more passionate than even you might think. Yeah.
Oh man, that's great news.
Yeah. So
I never heard it, so I'll have to listen to that.
Oh, you're the one we did together, or any of the others? Because I can.
Yeah. No, I never heard the one we did.
It was a great interview. I mean, it was just, I had been a fan for so many years. I actually came within inches of introducing Jellyfish years ago. And it was like one of those things where, I'm working for a radio station. We're in Milwaukee. You guys are opening up for the Black Crowes. And it was one of those things where one of the other guys I was working with was going to introduce the Black Crowes, but it was my job to introduce you guys. And anytime a radio guy goes backstage, it's usually met with a great deal of indifference and anger from the backstage crew. So for whatever reason, you guys got introduced, and you guys started before I even had the chance. So I was like inches away from introducing Jellyfish at the time. So one of those grand disappointments in life.
Oh, that's a drag.
Yeah. But I know,
we would have been sort of nice.
Yeah, no, you guys would have been fine, I'm sure. But but I know you're a fan of Andy Partridge and XTC. I know that was part of like the ad you responded to or created about Jellyfish was XTC was a big band for you.
Yeah, that's right. That was in my ad that I put out that Roger was the only person that responded to. It was XTC, Bowie, and the Blue Nile.
The Blue Nile, right? Which is a band that most people probably completely forgotten about.
Absolutely. I mean, those are three fairly disparate things, but yeah, I mean, Nobody was talking about the Blue Nile, and I think I mentioned earlier, like nobody was talking about Bowie either at that time, which is so bizarre. But it's my theory is that it's because he hadn't yet really gone away, so it was like, where people were sort of rediscovering his his genius output of 15 years or whatever throughout the 70s and early 80s, and so yeah, like I didn't get any calls putting Bowie in an ad, which is it's just bizarre.
Well, the early 90s for Bowie weren't necessarily great ones. I mean, after Let's Dance, there were a couple of records there that, in Bowie standards, kind of stiffed. I mean, Never Let Me Down was like the only time that David Bowie actually let people down.
That's right. Yeah, that's kind of my point. Yeah, he hadn't like stepped back.
Right.
So he was still making records fairly frequently, and they weren't very good. But man, when I put Bowie in there, I certainly wasn't talking about the Glass Spider era. I was talking about, Low.
Right.
So
the last time we talked, you had just come off performing with Elton John at the Oscars. You were involved in a bunch of other projects. And then soon after we talked, COVID hits, and then everything just kind of blows up. Did you have projects kind of in the works at that point? I mean, were there plans moving forward at the beginning of last year?
Well, the main thing that I was having to deal with was I had to move, and my house. I'm still unfortunately renting, even at this ripe old age, and I can't afford to buy anything here in LA.
Right.
But with Beck, we had a bunch of touring scheduled for the summer of 2020, and like a lot of touring. And once I found out I had to move, I started doing some math, and I realized I could afford to buy a house for the first time.
Good.
But only if this touring happened. So I went and I found a house, which is hard enough to do. I found a house, fell in love, saw it twice with the agent, and I was literally about to put in an offer. And it was a big deal because there's nothing cheap here.
Sure.
So it was a grip of money, and I was just going to barely be able to afford it. So I called management to confirm the dates that had been confirmed for 6 months. And at which time they said, we can no longer confirm these dates, Jason.
Wow.
And South by Southwest is just being canceled, and, blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff with the Foo Fighters is being canceled. And I was just like, oh, my God. So, excuse me, I was kind of forced back into the rental market.
Right.
And having to find a house where most places that were showing were only doing virtual tours. So I was looking at the possibility of having to sign a year lease with a place I hadn't even set foot in, which was brutal. Thankfully, I found a few places that were showing the houses, in person, and found a place I love. Moved in there in May, which was really hard to do with everybody at like COVID, peak, fear. And I've been here ever since. But man, I still wait, and now I wake up in a cold sweat because I don't know if I can afford this. I had to pay the whole year to get the place because this coming May my lease is up, and I'm just like, and this place is like $300 more than my price cap was. But
oh my God.
But I need to have a house with no attached walls so I can rock out.
Right.
And because I have to be able to rock out.
I mean, I've kind of been in that situation where you're looking at places online, and you see the pictures of a place that's available, and you go there and you realize, holy crap, this place is a shithole because anyone can make those pictures look terrific, and then you actually get there and like, this isn't exactly what I was expecting.
Well, exactly, and on top of that, the thing that iPhone cameras do with stretching the image is actually profound when it comes to looking at pictures of a house. Because
right.
the back, this place has a really cool little backyard with a deck and everything. It looked like a sprawling, grounds to like Brian Ferry's estate. And when I got here, it's just a little tiny backyard, but it's great. But it's just like, you're contending with that as well. So
right.
Yeah, those pictures are liars. So, but anyway, yeah, I'm happy here, and I've been far as projects, I didn't really have, much going on when COVID first hit, other than just a constantly working on my stuff, and which I've still been doing. And I now, at this point, I have an album done, and I'm just continuing to record more and more songs because I don't really feel like putting out a record right now without being able to do anything to promote it. So I'm probably going to hold off until maybe the summer, so that hopefully by the end of the year things are loosened up enough that I can tour it. I'm not going to tour something like a teenager. I'm not going to get in a van for 6 months, but do some sensible touring, and maybe on my own or maybe with a band. It doesn't really matter to me. I enjoy doing solo shows, but I know that I also like to have my music that I've created that allegedly sounds like a band, even though it's all me. I like to have that represented live with a band, but we'll see about all that stuff. But yeah, so right now I have about 15 things done.
So, because it's been a while since you've released, your own solo stuff. Have you been writing all along, or do you kind of just write when you're ready to start writing and getting a record together?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting thing for me. It's when I do stuff with other people, like being kind of a full-time part of the whole Beck situation. That kind of there's a psychological impact for me where I'm not just in a different mindset when I'm working with other people, where and there's a whole different set of criteria for me to be able to do that as well as I think I need to or can. And so when I'm playing, like when I'm touring with Beck, that's kind of like a different side, almost like an alter ego of me. That's kind of like spastic, almost like Wayne Kramer-ish, like spaz on guitar. So, and I'm also just trying to survive when I'm on the road, because it's hard on your body,
right,
to be on the road and to do that every night for an hour or 2 hours. So yeah, no, I'm not really writing much when I'm doing other things. Like I don't go work on someone's record for a day and then come home and write a song ever.
Right.
Like it takes me a decent amount of time to sort of get back into the frame of mind of me as what I do, which is, write songs and then arrange them and come up with all the parts and record them and spend time making it the way I want it to be. So yeah, there was a long chunk of time where I didn't write a single song.
Right.
And then once we had all this time off, it was, again, allegedly just supposed to be from the beginning of last year until the summer, I started getting back into, myself. And that's when all this stuff starts pouring out.
You're also the kind of guy that you're not just writing the music, but you're also the guy that's doing everything. I mean, you're playing every instrument. You're doing the whole thing. I would assume that because you're not in a band per se, that kind of slowed down the process, even in spite of computers and Pro Tools and all those kinds of things. But that's got to slow you down a little bit.
Well, it can, but oddly enough, I think in a way, at least if I'm not spending too much time laboring over something, I'm actually faster than a band learning something. Like, especially if you're as picky as I am, as far as to me, like the hi-hat part and the way the hi-hat is played and where the stick is hitting the cymbals is almost as important as the lyric. Now, there's not a lot of songwriters that are like that. I'm extremely. It's not picky. It's not the word. It's just what's the word I'm looking for? I'm extremely.
You're a perfectionist.
It's a perfectionist, but it's not a perfectionist so that everything's perfect. It's just everything has to. I'm very. It's very specific, and again, so if I'm working with a band, sometimes it can take forever to get another person to understand, because I'm kind of all about the intent of playing and all these different kind of variables that go into how somebody plays something. And you can't just tell any musician to play something a certain way and they'll understand what you're talking about. They're going to play it the way they play it. And for me, when I'm playing all the different instruments, I kind of have these like invisible passengers with me, and they're usually some of my heroes. Like if I'm playing bass, there's it's not even like necessarily a conscious thing, but there will always be a bit of an aggression to the bass playing that's part and parcel to my love of like Pete Farndon from the First Pretenders band,
right.
Or, you know, like certain people I'm kind of like, I'm considering them when I'm performing. And it's kind of a bizarre thing, but it's a real thing for me. So it's like, you know, trying to explain that to somebody else is just like laborious to say the least, and usually ends in tears. So.
I can understand it and have heard that with you. I own a copy of of some of the Japanese records, like everyone says it's on. I have that compilation, and obviously you're playing with a band, and obviously when you redid a lot of those songs, you knew what you wanted, and you weren't getting it out of the band in those demos. And the final product that was recorded later on, you know, to me, as I'm hearing them, it's very, very clear. This is what Jason wanted all the time, and he just couldn't get that kind of what you were hearing in your head reproduced how you want it in a different way.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And you know, I used to be a lot less open to other people's kind of ideas when it came to my own songs. Now, oddly enough, now that I'm even more sort of a playing in my own sandbox kind of guy by himself because he's rude and nobody wants to play with him. You know, now I'm actually more open to other people's ideas, but yeah, going back to the speed of things, the thing that trips me up as far as time is the mixing, because, you know, I'm not only playing everything, I'm engineering, and then I'm mixing in my home studio, and I have a real console, you know, 24 channel 70s console and a bunch of outboard gear. And I get really into that process. I don't have a real good mix room at all. Like I'm literally, my stuff is just thrown in a bedroom of this house. Right. And I can't do much to the construction of the house because I don't own it. So I can't like soundproof a room, you know?
Well, you'll never get your security deposit back if that's the case.
I'll never get the security back. Yeah, and then the next person moving in is going to move their infant into a sand wall filled. You know, it's like, I don't think so. They're like, we can't hear him crying. I'm like, it's because it's soundproof. Isn't that amazing? But yeah, that's kind of where I spend most of my time. But yeah, again, it kind of goes back to like just me getting in the headspace of being, you know, sort of what I feel like I was put on this earth to do, which is make this music by myself. I mean, I just really, really enjoy it. I'm not showing off, you know, it's not like, hey, look at me, I can play everything. Like, I don't care about that. I don't even care if people know that it's me playing everything. It's just to get it to do what I want it to do, you know, because I have like this real, like profound love for all the different instruments. I mean, I'm just so into like the aesthetics and the build quality and the, you know, the everything about like vintage guitars and drum sets and synthesizers and amps. I mean, that's all I have here. It's all like a museum.
When you're kind of in your head the way you are, and you have a level of perfectionism trying to get things right, and you've got 15 songs that you're working on, because it's just you, how long does it take for you to be satisfied with the final product? I mean, there are some people that just will, you know, work tirelessly on the same thing and not really sure exactly when a song is done. Like there's like when is enough to say, okay, this is finally, I'm happy with this. There's nothing more I can do.
Well, that's definitely a you know, fairly modern dilemma as far as, you know, there's so many people having a fairly comprehensive home recording situation where they can actually make a record that sounds slightly competitive with records done in real studios in their bedroom now. You know, that's a fairly new thing. For me, I kind of, it might sound funny because sometimes it takes me, you know, a decade to release a record. But I'm pretty good at actually committing. Like, you know, I have some things there's going to be a few songs on this new record that that go back even, more than a handful of years. And I certainly could redo some of it, if not all of it, if I wanted to. I certainly have time, but it's like, no, that's what it was. That's a time capsule. That's cool. Yeah, that guitar, whatever, it could be, the tone could be better, or maybe my taste in tones have changed a little bit, and could be a little darker and muddier, and that's kind of what I like more now. But no, like, just commit time. So the thing that that I wrestle with the most is getting a mix to sound where I think it's competitive enough to not have people go, "What the hell is that?" when they're listening to a bunch of different things. Like, I want them to go, "What the hell is that?" because it's so cool and it sounds different. My stuff is always going to sound different because I have zero engineering education. I have zero mix education. I just turn and twist things until I think they sound good. And I also really like this kind of like this idea of sort of mid-fi. I don't know if I talked about that last time, but that's kind of like what I'm going for. Like, I'm not trying to make something that sounds like a 2021, hi-fi engineering award thing. I don't care about that. I'm trying to make something that sounds almost hi-fi for 1975. That's like what I'm into. So, like if somebody's like, "Oh, these records sound kind of like small or whatever," they like kind of dull compared to like this new stuff that's just everything's so maxed out.
But unlike a lot of the kind of stuff that you hear now, anyone who listens to a Jason Falkner song can hear the difference between a well-crafted song and just a piece of audio production, is what you may hear on the radio or what you may hear on streaming services. It's not the craftsmanship of songwriting doesn't seem to be a priority the way it is for some people. And certainly that's the case. I think it's the case for you.
No, I agree with that. I mean, at the end of the day, of course, that's the main thing. That's the most important thing, is that the song does something to me and hopefully others, and that it's emotional and also visceral and all this different criteria I have. I mean, even my kind of softer things or more, introspective things, I still like them to sound kind of tough. So there's all this stuff that I'm dealing with that might even be at odds with itself. Like most people don't want I hate to use the word ballad because it's just, I don't know. I just think of Sister Christian when I hear the word ballad. But I want everything to sound kind of urgent and tough, for lack of a better word, sonically, even if the song isn't that. That's one of my favorite things about, like, I figured out that, like, pretty much anything recorded in 1974 I'm gonna like that record even if I hate the songs. I'm just gonna like the sound of it. I don't know, like State of the Art in 1973, 74 is just such a good, like, tough sound. And a lot of that is the gear and just where people were at engineering wise. But
well, I'm kind of thinking of your song Before My Heart Attacks. It's a light song, but it's basically, and it's hilarious at the same time, but heartbreaking. Yeah. So you've got a lot of emotion in that song, but at the same time, I listen to it and smile. The garbage is piling up. I'm writing a letter.
Yeah.
It's just a great.
Yeah. Well, and regarding that record, basically even my, that's my first solo record, and then the second one as well, Can You Still Feel? I wasn't as adept in the studio. So those are, like the first, that Presents Author Unknown, my first solo record, is something that, I wish I had those master tapes because I would love to remix that record myself. And, of course, not taking anything away from the original release. I'm definitely proud of it. But that record actually has kind of a softer kind of fuzz to it that was not necessarily what I wanted, but I was sort of at the mercy of the engineer I was working with. And I, love the guy to pieces, but there was a different language that he spoke when it came to, like, making things kind of like aggressive. So that record isn't very aggressive sounding, even though some of the songs are. Like Miracle Medicine should sound like it's punching you in the throat.
But it's still a great song, even if that wasn't, even if you wanted something more out of it.
Right.
I read something, and I totally agree with this, when someone said there are no lukewarm Jason Falkner fans. It's like you either love the music or you haven't heard the music, and that there's nothing in between. There's nothing in between. There's no gray area there. It's one or the other.
Well, that works for me.
Yeah, well, it should. I hope so.
I was just going to say quickly. I think I'm very, very happy that I with my fan base. I mean, there's been a lot written about me where it's the kind of angle is this kind of sad, like why isn't this guy a household name, or all this kind of like just sad and regrets, and it's like I don't think I've ever done an interview where I'm speaking like that. That's a journalistic angle that's actually quite lazy. I'm happy with the majority of things. I'm not happy with how much money I have. I'm not doing this for the money, but I certainly wish that I could buy a house. Let's put it that way. This has nothing to do with art or music. That's just me making a plea out there that maybe there's a philanthropist that wants to buy me a house. That's it.
It's kind of like, I would compare it to, say, like a Marshall Crenshaw, where he's a guy where everyone who listens to his music says, why isn't this guy the biggest rock star in the world? And I think at one point he released a record, which I thought the title was just so perfect. I've suffered for my art. Now it's time for you to do it. And I just like, that kind of says the whole thing. It's like, he's making art, and you either listen to it and love it, or you're not even aware of it. I'm sure the frustration of not having the commercial success that you probably deserved or may have, or were on your way to earning, or however you want to look at it. Jason Faulkner's music is a fallback for me. It's like when I got nothing to listen to, I go to Jason Faulkner, which is saying something, because I got a lot of shit in my house. But I go to Jason Faulkner stuff, and whether it's TV Eyes or the solo records. So I'm one of those people that's either that is on the passionate side of what you've put out. For crying out loud, I even bought the Make It Be with you and our Stevie Moore, which is nice. Among one of the weirdest artists in the world, that guy. But nevertheless,
absolutely,
it's a cool record.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite things I've done.
Yeah,
I just adore that guy, and there's very few antagonists like that left that are sincere and that have that sense of humor.
And prolific. He's released like 400 albums.
Oh no, he's wildly prolific, and he's wildly he's inventive. Just like still now, like if you give him an instrument, he'll do something that you've not heard on that instrument, even if it's a freaking acoustic guitar, or something that doesn't make sense on that instrument, but it's so much better than if somebody did what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm just a fan for life.
I do want to toss out a couple of numbers for you, because I think that and I'm leading into something here. So according to Discogs.com, the highest amount ever spent for the Japanese-only copy of All Quiet on the Noise Floor is $137. And then on Amazon, as of just like 3 or 4 hours ago, the compilation everyone says it's on there's a copy for sale for $969. Now, I don't know how much of that you're getting. I'm going to assume it's close to nothing. But my point is, when All Quiet on the Noise Floor became available on Spotify just a few weeks ago, your fans on social media went absolutely batshit, because most of those fans have never heard this music. And it's a great record. Is there a reason why they were only available in Japan, and what went into the process of getting these things available on streaming?
Well, it was only available in Japan since 2009 because the Japanese label, that's the only label that actually released it. It was always on me to find a place to put this out for the rest of the world. And also, get it streaming. And I just took my sweet time to get it. I took 11 years to get it, to put it up on all the streaming services, and I can't tell you why. I just, I kind of that record actually kind of turned into like that the whole lost album folklore thing. That was like my lost album. My friend who runs the label Cobra Side, that's just basically they do distribution deals and they just print up records, but they did the double LP, the very nice double LP of I'm Okay, You're Okay. They put that out into, I think, in the same year that All Quiet on the Noise Floor came out in Japan, and my friend was like, hey, let's do that up. Let's do that new record as well. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And then I was thinking, I was kind of always thinking that I would, like, once that record was over a year old, I was like, oh, well, it only came out in Japan. It's a rarity. It's fine. That's cool. I'm not making any money off of any of this stuff. So it doesn't really matter. And then the years pass by, and then I start thinking, well, when I have a new record, I will get whatever label I end up working with. If I do work with a label, I'll get them to buy this record off of me and put this out as like hey, everybody, Jason Falkner's got a new record. This is not the new one. This is the one that came out a few years ago. But here this is on, deluxe vinyl and streaming and whatever, if CDs or matter, all that stuff. And then I just got so busy with Beck and just other projects. I just, just kind of like let that one lie. And then, so call this a New Year's resolution. It wasn't a conscious New Year's resolution, but I was just like, man, get this thing up on streaming. I'm going to do, cause I'm Okay, You're Okay is also not on any of the streaming services. I'll be doing that as well in about a month.
So it is going to be available.
It's going to be available. And here's the funny thing. The only reason it's not on iTunes is, I don't really use iTunes, but it's not on Apple Music or iTunes, because when I put it up just, a couple weeks ago, I put it as a new release so that it has the opportunity to get on some new playlists and things like that. Is that those things are fairly important with releasing music streaming now. If you put 2009, it will only be on these legacy playlists or whatever. These I'm on a bunch of 90s playlists with stuff that I can't even listen to. I'm just like, that's I wasn't even part of that scene then. Like I'm not part of that at all.
No, I know. I've noticed that.
So yeah, I just wanted it to kind of be viewed as a new release by this. Well, it'll only be viewed as a new release by those who are uninitiated. So that's fine. Everybody else knows that it came out and a while ago. But it's all just like a preamble to this new record when I get that finally out, hopefully this summer.
I guess and this is kind of a hard question, because when you're releasing stuff now, I assume you're not dealing with record companies in the same way that you used to. I know that your experience with record companies has not been all that great. I mean, with Jellyfish, Charisma didn't really give you guys the support you deserved. With Epic, with the Grays, same kind of thing. Elektra didn't necessarily push, your first couple of solo records like they should. How is it different now, releasing your own stuff as opposed to then? Is it better? Is it easier? Or are the challenges totally more cumbersome?
Well, I mean, just putting this thing up for streaming is about as easy as it gets. You just go through a middle thing like DistroKid or one of those things, and it takes an hour to fill out all the forms and everything. It's pretty simple. I mean, the thing that's not as exciting is you don't have like a big release date with promo, and you don't get to see, I guess, money being spent on spreading the word.
Yeah.
That was always, that's exciting stuff, even though most people, when it's happening, they don't realize that it's their money that's being spent. They're going to get a whopping bill for it later. It's not just a tree falling in the forest making no sound. That's the one thing that's kind of like the downside about it, but it's also like a lot less pressure. Like it's kind of nice to just go, look here, and then here it is, and then like you guys can talk about it, and and please talk about it. I appreciate it, and spread the word that way. I mean, I feel like the old school, old guard way of releasing records is only really benefiting like the 1%ers right now, because there really is. There's a very small middle ground now. It's like either you're a struggling band or you're Billie Eilish. and there's not a huge in between. I would like to carve out an in between for myself, because I don't want to go out there and just struggle and play to 50 people, but I also don't entertain any unrealistic notions that I'm going to take over the pop world at this point in my life.
Right.
I know for a fact that that's not going to happen, but I do think I've always thought that the world was going to kind of come to me, and that's not saying that I think the world owes me a living or that I'm entitled or anything like that. It's an artistic statement, meaning I'm not following any sort of trends. I'm not trying to make something that sounds old, and I'm not necessarily trying to make something that is, where I'm going to clubs every night and then emulating that and trying to stay one step ahead of like trends.
Right.
I'm not doing either of those things. It's like my musical universe is a fairly honest indication and representation of who I am as a person, and my quest for understanding and truth and sometimes slightly emo, revealing of myself. But all of that is like, that's been a thread throughout my entire canon of work. So it's like, I understand if somebody discovers me and goes, wow, this guy is different, because it is different, because it's not, I'm not putting on a facade. I just feel like that's so much more interesting. I mean, one of my favorite guys in the world was Bowie, and he was all about facades. But the thing about David Bowie was, you still felt this guy in all those personas. You still could see the man, and that's why he's interesting, and that's why he's a cut above all the other sort of glitter rock guys. And and then also he abandoned that whole thing fairly quickly. But he was also one of those people that was very aware of the zeitgeist.
Yeah,
that's not really what I'm doing.
And it's interesting that his last album was probably the most close to who he was as a person. I mean, it's like most revealing album of his career wound up being his very last.
You know what, man? I've never even heard it. I was so crushed when he passed.
I'm a huge Bowie fan, and I got that one, and it's like when you listen to it, you just you feel that loss, and it's like there are very few records that I can think of where every hair on your body standing up, because you knew at the time he's recording this, he knew this is his last time out. It's a remarkably beautiful record. But yeah, you should definitely take a spin with it. But
I think I need to do that.
But so I have a business question, because this is when you talk about releasing a record, a few months after I talked to you back in February, this probably would have been like around May, maybe June. I talked to Roger Manning, and he's in a band now with Eric Dover and Tim Smith called the Licorice Quartet. But what's interesting about it is their plan is to release 3 EPs over an 18-month span. And his explanation for that I thought was interesting. Rather than having one release, now has 3, and he could extend the potential business options over a longer course of time, rather than just one at one particular time where it's out and then it's done. Does that sound like a plausible business idea to you, or does that not make any sense?
No, I mean that sounds like that's a way of doing things. I mean, for me, I'm going to emerge from this clampdown with 2 full-length records. So if I was going that route, I mean, to me it doesn't really matter. Like release a song, release an album. Like I don't know. I'm still such a big fan of the album format of like sequencing a 40-minute body of work, and being able to sit down and listen to that. I'm frustrated with EPs because they're if I like them, they're over too soon. And again, and another thing about me is I'm not a real businessman, so I don't really think about how to stretch out my impact. I hope that the records just keep impacting people as they are. So it certainly doesn't sound like a dumb idea.
No,
it's just.
But I was wondering if that would be something that you would consider. But if you've got 2 records in your mind ready to go, I'd much rather be immersed in a full experience of an album and holding on to something than just having it being streamed or have only 4 songs available. I'm kind of in your camp on that one. The experience is better.
Well, exactly. I mean, for me, there's a reason that I don't know, just a 10 to 14 song body of work is just, it's something, you get more immersed in, and it's this journey that you go on with the record. And I'm fully aware that a lot of people now just listen to songs. They don't even listen to a full album. And, I'm aware of this climate, but I'm also like kind of stubborn in the fact that I just still want to kind of like not educate, but just kind of like, look, this is better. Like, listen to the whole record. Listen to it in the sequence that it was provided. Like, there's a reason that song follows that song, and then that little segue goes into that song. It all is part of a thought, and so yeah, I'm just a big fan of full length. Yeah. Also, putting stuff out on vinyl is extremely important to me, because as I'm pacing through my house, which I can't help but pace when I'm on the phone. I'm looking right now at 4 massive racks of CDs that still have the shrink wrap over them from my move in May. However, if I walk into my living room, I'm looking at probably 3,000 LPs. Half of them are scattered on the floor because I listen to them every night. I don't even have a CD player hooked up.
My problem is that Amazon has made buying used CDs so easy, and anything that I didn't catch on vinyl the first time, I now got it on CD, and I listen to vinyl too. So it's like I get to pick and choose a little bit. I don't have that. I got a good, a pretty decent collection. Probably not quite to what you're talking about, but the moment I get something in the mail, I'm ripping the plastic off right away and diving right into it. I just can't help it. It's like it's like a sickness.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, my disease is full blown. I mean, I'm buying an LP on eBay at least twice a week, and it has to be a first pressing. Blah blah. Nerdy.
Yeah, I don't have to get that far, but now that I'm interviewing a lot of people, I find that if I don't go ahead and either buy a bunch of stuff before I talk to them or even after I talk to them, that I'm just not really doing my job. And there have been the veracity that I'm buying now is like ridiculous. I mean, I talked to Bob Mould from Husker Du, and he has a brand new box. I have a brand new box set out. Now, I was kind of going back and forth. Do I spend the $130 for it? And as soon as I finished talking to him, like, okay, I'm buying that right now. And I'm glad I did, because it's a wicked cool box set. But it's like now I'm reinforming myself for all these artists I'm talking to. So it's been kind of a joy to do it that way.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So, well, listen, I do appreciate the time. I'm real anxious to see what you come up with this summer with the new records. And like I said, I've been a fan of yours for an awful long time, since the very early Jellyfish days, and so it's a pleasure to catch up with you.
Oh man, likewise. Thanks again.
I hope to do it again.
All right, thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Jason. Take care. You can find Jason Falkner's music streaming on Spotify and other services. You will not be disappointed. Thanks for listening. You can email me at bax@rock102.com. I'd love to know what you think. We'll see you next time at Baxy's Musical Podcast.